The black car spun sideways on the wet road, and Evelyn Cross gripped the door handle so hard her knuckles turned white. Her driver of 6 years, a quiet man named Peter, had just swerved to avoid a truck that came out of nowhere. The truck did not have its lights on. It had not been an accident. Evelyn knew the difference between bad luck and a warning, and this felt like a warning. Peter pulled the car to the side of the road, breathing hard, hands shaking on the wheel. "I'm sorry, Miss Cross," he said. "I can't keep doing this job. Not after tonight. Not after last week, too." Evelyn did not argue. She had seen the fear in his eyes, and fear like that could not be paid away with a bonus. 2 days later, Peter left his resignation letter on her desk and did not come back for his final paycheck in person. He had someone else collect it. That left Evelyn Cross, one of the youngest CEOs in the country, without a driver, without protection, and without anyone she fully trusted watching the road behind her. Her assistant, a sharp young woman named Grace, sat across from her that morning with a folder full of resumes. "We have 12 candidates," Grace said, "all background checked, all experienced." Evelyn did not open the folder right away. She looked out the window of her office, 40 floors above the city, at the traffic moving like a slow river far below. "I don't want someone experienced," she said. "I want someone who won't ask questions." Grace tilted her head. "That's an odd thing to want in an employee." "I don't want someone who reports to the board every time I stop somewhere unexpected," Evelyn said. "I want someone who just drives." Grace slid the folder closer. "There's one applicant who isn't on any agency list. He walked in yesterday and asked for an interview directly. No connections, no references from big families. Former military, single father, needs the job badly. I almost turned him away." "Why didn't you?" Grace paused. "Because he didn't smile the entire time he was here. Everyone else who applies for this job smiles like they're trying to sell me something. He didn't. He just answered every question like it cost him nothing and everything at the same time." Evelyn Cross looked at the folder for a long moment before she reached for it. "Bring him in," she said. "Today." Marcus Reyes stood outside the glass building for 10 minutes before he made himself walk through the door. He was wearing his only clean shirt, the collar a little frayed at the edges, and shoes that had been resoled twice, because buying new ones meant choosing between shoes and his daughter's school supplies. He had chosen the school supplies both times. Inside, the lobby floor was made of pale marble, so polished he could see his own reflection looking back up at him, tired and unshaven in a way he hoped did not show as badly as it felt. He counted the floor tiles while he waited, 31 from the door to the front desk. It was a habit from another life, counting things, watching exits, watching who came and went. He could not turn it off even here, in a place that smelled like money and lemon cleaner. A young woman with a clipboard called his name, and Marcus followed her into an elevator that rose so smoothly he barely felt it moving. Evelyn Cross was standing by the window when he walked into her office, her back to him, her arms crossed. She did not turn around right away. "Mr. Reyes," she said, "your resume says you left the military 4 years ago and have worked delivery jobs and warehouse shifts since then. No driving experience for private clients. No references from previous employers in this field." "That's correct," Marcus said. She turned to face him. She was younger than he expected, and her eyes moved over him the way a person reads a contract, looking for anything hidden in small print. "Then tell me why I should hire you over 11 other candidates who have exactly that experience," she said. Marcus did not reach for a rehearsed answer, because he did not have one. He had spent the bus ride here thinking about rent, not interview lines. "Because I don't need this job to feel important," he said. "I need it to feed my daughter. That kind of need makes a man reliable in ways a resume can't show you." Something in Evelyn's face shifted, so small most people would have missed it. She sat down behind her desk and folded her hands. "What did you leave behind to be standing here?" she asked. It was not a question anyone had asked him in an interview before. Marcus felt the words rise up out of him before he could stop them, quiet and flat, like something he had said to himself many nights, and never out loud to a stranger. "My wife," he said. "Elena." The room went very still. Marcus heard the air conditioning hum, heard his own pulse in his ears, and wished he could take the sentence back and swallow it whole. Evelyn did not ask him to explain. She did not offer sympathy either, the kind that comes too easily and means too little. She simply looked at him for a long moment, then reached for a pen and wrote something on the paper in front of her. "You start Monday," she said. "6 in the morning. Do not be late, and do not ask me questions about where we are going unless it is necessary for the route." Marcus blinked. "That's it? No more questions?" "I have all the answer I need," Evelyn said. "You just gave it to me." He left the building without fully understanding what had happened, only that he had a job now, and that mattered more than understanding it. That night, he sat at the small kitchen table in his apartment while his daughter Lily colored a picture of a dog with too many legs, humming a song from her school that had no real tune. "Did you get the job, Daddy?" she asked without looking up from her drawing. "I got the job," Marcus said. Lily grinned so wide he could see the gap where her front tooth used to be. "Is she nice? The lady you're driving for?" Marcus thought about the sharp eyes, the question about Elena, the way Evelyn Cross had looked at him, like she was reading something written under his skin. "She's careful," he said. "Careful people usually have a reason to be." Monday morning, Marcus arrived at 5:45, 20 minutes early, and stood beside the car, checking the mirrors and the tire pressure, the way he had been trained to check equipment long before any mission. It was not part of the job description. It was simply what his hands did now, on their own, whether anyone asked or not. Evelyn came out of the building at 6 exactly, wearing a dark coat and carrying a phone she was already typing on before she reached the car. "Corporate office first," she said, sliding into the back seat. "Then the Ashworth building at 9. "Copy that," Marcus said, and pulled into traffic. They drove 3 blocks in silence before Marcus's eyes flicked to the mirror and stayed there a beat too long. A gray sedan had pulled out of a side street behind them. It was not unusual on its own. Cars pulled out of side streets every day in this city. What was unusual was that the same gray sedan had been parked outside Evelyn's building when Marcus arrived that morning, engine running, no driver visible getting in or out. Marcus said nothing. He simply took the next left instead of the route he had planned, watching the mirror without moving his head, the old habit clicking into place like a key turning in a lock it had not touched in years. The gray sedan turned left as well. In the back seat, Evelyn was still typing on her phone, unaware, her whole focus on an email about quarterly numbers, not on the 2 extra turns her driver had just taken for no reason she could see. Marcus took a third turn, unnecessary by any normal route, and watched the sedan follow again. His hands stayed loose on the wheel. His voice when he spoke stayed exactly as flat and steady as it had been in the interview. "Miss Cross," he said, "I think we should take the long way to the office today." Evelyn looked up from her phone for the first time since getting in the car. "Why?" she asked. Marcus did not answer with the whole truth. Not yet. He only said the smallest part of it, the part that mattered most in that moment. "Because someone's been following us since we left your building," he said, "and I'd like to know who, before we get where we're going." The words hung in the car, quiet and enormous, and outside the window, the gray sedan slid 2 car lengths closer through the morning traffic. Evelyn Cross did not raise her voice, and she did not reach for her phone to call for help. She simply turned her head, very slowly, and looked out the back window at the gray sedan behind them. "You're certain," she said. It was not really a question. "I'm certain," Marcus said. "It was parked outside your building before I even started the engine. No one got in or out. Now it's 3 turns behind us, on a route that makes no sense unless someone already knows where we're going." Evelyn faced forward again. Her jaw was tight, but her voice stayed level, the way a person speaks when they have practiced staying calm longer than they have practiced anything else. "Lose it," she said, quietly. "I don't want a scene, and I don't want the board hearing that their CEO is being chased through the city before breakfast." Marcus did not ask why she cared more about appearances than danger in that moment. He simply drove, taking a service road behind a row of restaurants, cutting through a parking garage that had two exits on opposite streets. By the time they came out the far side, the gray sedan was gone. Neither of them spoke again until they reached the office. That night, Evelyn stayed late at her desk, long after Grace and the rest of the staff had gone home. She told herself it was quarterly reports. It was not quarterly reports. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number, the third one that week. The message said only, "You should have sold when you had the chance." Evelyn stared at it for a long time before she deleted it, the same way she had deleted the other two. She did not tell Grace. She did not tell security. She told herself that telling anyone would make it real, and she was not ready for it to be real, not with a merger vote 3 weeks away and half the board already looking for reasons to push her out of her own company. She did not tell Marcus either. He was a driver. Drivers drove. But Marcus noticed things that were not said as much as things that were. He noticed how Evelyn checked her phone at stoplights with an expression that did not match an email about numbers. He noticed how she asked him twice that week to take different routes home, for no stated reason. He noticed how she flinched, just slightly, when a delivery van pulled up too close to the car outside a restaurant. He said nothing about any of it. He was not paid to notice. But noticing, like counting exits, was something he could not switch off, no matter how many years had passed since anyone called him by rank. At home, life continued in its smaller, louder way. Lily had a school project due, a diorama of the solar system, and half the planets she had made out of clay had fallen apart in her backpack on the walk home. "Saturn's rings broke," she announced, holding up a lump of gray clay that no longer resembled anything. "We'll fix it," Marcus said, kneeling down at the kitchen table beside her. "Saturn's rings are just clay and wire, nothing that can't be put back together." Lily looked at him with the particular seriousness only a 7-year-old can manage. Mommy would have known how to make the rings not fall apart. She was good at art. Marcus's hands went still over the clay for just a moment. "She was," he said. "She was good at a lot of things." Lily nodded, already moving on to the next planet, the conversation opening and closing in the space of a breath, the way children could hold grief lightly enough to set it down and pick it back up without warning. Marcus rebuilt Saturn's rings that night after Lily went to sleep, sitting alone at the table with a small tube of glue and more patience than the task really required, because doing something small and fixable felt better than sitting with everything in his life that was not. The next morning, Evelyn was unusually quiet in the car. She did not open her laptop. She did not check her phone. She simply sat with her hands folded in her lap, staring out the window at nothing in particular. "Miss Cross," Marcus said, glancing at the mirror. "You all right back there?" "Fine," she said, too quickly. Marcus did not push. He had learned, in another life, that people revealed more in silence than in answers they were forced to give. He simply kept driving, and 3 minutes later, without being asked, Evelyn spoke again. "Do you ever feel like everyone around you is waiting for you to fail?" she asked. "Like they're not rooting against you exactly. Just waiting, patient, comfortable, like your failure would simply confirm something they already believed." Marcus considered the question honestly before answering. "Every day I walked into a job interview these past 4 years," he said. "People look at a man my age with my kind of resume and they see a story already written, broke, struggling, probably difficult. They're not rooting against me, they're just not surprised when things don't go my way." Evelyn was quiet for a moment. "That's exactly it," she said. "Difference is," Marcus added, "the story they've written about you and the story that's actually true are two different things. Most people never bother to check." Evelyn looked at him in the mirror then, really looked, the way she had looked at him during the interview, searching for something under the surface of his words. "You didn't finish your resume," she said. 4 years in the military isn't on there, just the years after." Marcus's hands tightened slightly on the wheel, then relaxed again. "Some parts of a resume aren't meant for hiring managers," he said. Evelyn did not push further, though the question sat behind her eyes for the rest of the drive. That week, the threats grew closer together, and closer to home, in a way that made Evelyn's carefully controlled world start to crack at its edges. A courier arrived at her office with a small package that had no return address and no shipping label from any company that existed. Inside was a photograph of Evelyn getting into her car outside her apartment building, taken from across the street, time-stamped 2 days earlier. Grace found her staring at the photograph at her desk, her face pale in a way Grace had never seen before. "Miss Cross," Grace said carefully, "you need to call the police. This isn't a strange email anymore. Someone is watching you in person." "If I call the police," Evelyn said quietly, "it becomes public within a day, and the board will use it as proof I can't run this company under pressure. They've been looking for an excuse for months. Someone taking your photograph outside your home is not a business problem," Grace said. "It's a safety problem." Evelyn folded the photograph and placed it in her drawer, the same drawer where she kept the 3 earlier messages she had never told anyone about. "I'll handle it," she said, in the tone she used to end conversations she did not want to continue. Marcus found out about the photograph by accident 3 days later, when Grace, worried and out of options, asked him directly if he had noticed anyone unusual near the apartment building in the mornings. "Why do you ask?" Marcus said, his voice carefully even. Grace hesitated, then decided that a driver who had already spotted a tail once, without being told to look for one, deserved more trust than his job title suggested. "Someone's watching her," Grace said, "taking photographs, sending messages. She won't call the police because of the merger vote. I don't know what to do, and I think you might be the only person close enough to actually see something before it's too late." Marcus said nothing for a long moment, turning the small container of pens on Grace's desk between his fingers, watching them roll from one side to the other without quite meaning to. "I'll watch," he said finally, "but someone needs to convince her that pride isn't worth her life." Grace looked at him carefully. "You said that like someone who's seen the cost of that kind of pride before." Marcus did not answer the implied question. He simply set the pens down, straightened them into a neat row without realizing he had done it, and walked back toward the garage where the car was waiting. That evening, driving Evelyn home, Marcus broke his own rule about not asking questions beyond the route. "The photograph," he said. "Grace told me." Evelyn's spine straightened in the back seat. That wasn't hers to share. "She's scared for you," Marcus said. "So am I, and I've only known you 3 weeks." "You're my driver," Evelyn said, her voice sharp now, the sharpness of someone protecting something soft underneath. "Not my bodyguard, not my therapist. Drive the car, Mr. Reyes." Marcus kept his eyes on the road, his voice steady despite the sting of her tone. "Copy that," he said. They drove the rest of the way in silence, but when they reached her building, Evelyn did not get out right away. She sat in the back seat for a long moment, staring at her own reflection in the window. "I'm sorry," she said finally, quiet enough that Marcus almost missed it. "I'm not used to anyone noticing when I'm afraid. Most people only notice when I'm useful." Marcus turned slightly in his seat, not enough to be improper, just enough to be heard clearly. "I notice things for a living," he said, "or I used to. Old habit." "What kind of living," Evelyn asked, "makes noticing things a habit that doesn't switch off?" Marcus held her gaze in the mirror for a moment longer than a driver usually would. "The kind I don't put on a resume," he said. He got out and opened her door before she could ask anything more, and Evelyn Cross walked into her building that night carrying a question she had not carried before, one that had nothing to do with mergers or boards or the man following her through the city. It had to do with the quiet man driving her car, whose eyes moved like they were still counting exits in rooms he had left long ago. The next morning, Evelyn arrived at the office earlier than usual, and Grace found her standing by the window with a cup of coffee that had gone cold in her hands, untouched. "You're here early," Grace said. "I couldn't sleep," Evelyn admitted. "I keep thinking about the photograph. about the messages, about how long someone might have been watching before I even noticed. Grace set a folder on the desk. The security firm sent over their preliminary report. Nothing conclusive yet, but they've traced the phone number partway. It bounces through 3 different carriers before it disappears. Someone who knows what they're doing, Evelyn said. Someone with money, Grace added. That narrows the list considerably, given who has both the motive and the resources. Evelyn did not answer, though her mind had already begun circling toward names she did not want to say out loud. Not yet, not until she had something firmer than instinct to stand on. That afternoon, Marcus picked up Lily from school, between drop-off and pickup, a schedule he had built with careful precision over the past 2 years, one job stacked exactly on top of the other with no room for error. He waited at the curb with the other parents, most of them in casual clothes, him still in the plain dark suit the job required, feeling the familiar gap between himself and the other fathers standing nearby. "Daddy," Lily called, running toward the car with her backpack half open, papers threatening to spill from it with every step. "We learned about volcanoes today. Did you know lava can move slower than a person walking, but it still destroys everything because it never stops?" "I did not know that," Marcus said, opening the door for her. "Sounds like a good lesson for a lot of things." "What do you mean?" Lily asked, buckling herself in. "Nothing," Marcus said, "just thinking out loud." He drove her to his sister's apartment across town, where Lily stayed for a few hours most weekday afternoons, while Marcus finished his shift, a temporary arrangement that had stretched into its 2nd year without either of them planning it that way. His sister Diane met them at the door with the same tired warmth she always carried, raising 4 kids of her own on a nurse's schedule that left little room for anything extra, yet always finding room for one more. "Long day," Diane said, taking in the shadows under her brother's eyes. "Getting longer," Marcus admitted. "New jobs got more to it than I expected." "Good more or bad more?" Diane asked. Marcus thought about the gray sedan, the photograph, the way Evelyn's hands had trembled slightly when she thought no one was watching. "Complicated more," he said finally. "I'll tell you when I understand it myself." Diane studied him a moment longer, the way older sisters do when they sense something being carefully left unsaid, then let it go, ushering Lily inside toward a table already covered with her cousin's homework and snack wrappers. Marcus returned to the office building that evening to collect Evelyn for the drive home, and found her standing outside earlier than her usual schedule, arms crossed against the cold, waiting on the sidewalk instead of inside the lobby as she normally did. "You're early," he said, pulling up to the curb. "I wanted air," Evelyn said, getting in. The building started feeling smaller than usual today. Marcus pulled into traffic, watching the mirrors out of habit more than necessity now, though the habit had sharpened considerably over the past 2 weeks. "Anything happen?" he asked. "No new messages," Evelyn said, which somehow makes it worse. Waiting for the next one is its own kind of exhausting. "Waiting is always worse than the thing itself," Marcus said. "At least once something happens, you know what you're actually dealing with." Evelyn looked at him in the mirror. "Is that from experience," she asked, "or something you tell yourself to get through the day?" "Both," Marcus said. "Most true things usually are." They drove in silence for a while, the city sliding past in its ordinary evening rhythm, buses pulling to their stops, people crossing streets with their heads down against the cold. "Can I ask you something else?" Evelyn said eventually. "You can ask," Marcus said. "Doesn't mean I'll have a good answer." "Do you ever regret leaving?" she asked. "The military. Whatever you actually did there. Do you ever wish you'd stayed?" Marcus was quiet long enough that Evelyn wondered if she had asked something she should not have. "Every day," he finally said. "I wonder if staying would have meant Elena was still alive. Because I would have been overseas when the accident happened, either way, and someone else would have made the call that brought me home early instead of too late. But wondering doesn't change what happened. And Lily needed a father more than the world needed one more soldier. So no, I don't regret leaving. I regret the timing of everything around it. That's a different kind of regret." Evelyn absorbed this quietly, watching the city lights reflect off the window glass. "I think I understand that difference better than I used to," she said. "A week ago, I don't think I would have." Marcus glanced at her once in the mirror, something unspoken passing between them, before he returned his eyes to the road ahead, both of them carrying the weight of the conversation the rest of the way home, in a silence that felt, for the first time, less like distance and more like company. The board meeting room on the 40th floor had a long glass table that reflected the city skyline like still water, and around it sat 11 people who each wanted something different from Evelyn Cross, none of which was her success. She stood at the head of the table with a presentation open behind her, numbers and projections glowing on the screen, and she spoke without a single note card in her hand, the way she always did when she wanted to prove she needed no one's help. A man near the far end of the table watched her with an expression that never quite matched his words. His name was Nathan Voss, the company's second-largest shareholder after Evelyn herself, a man who had wanted the CEO position since before her father died and left it to his daughter instead of him. "Impressive projections," Nathan said, when Evelyn finished, "though I wonder if the board should consider whether current leadership can withstand the pressure of a merger this size, given recent instability." "Instability," Evelyn repeated, keeping her voice smooth. "I wasn't aware there was any." Nathan's smile did not reach his eyes. "Rumors travel, Miss Cross. Security concerns, personal matters affecting focus. It would be a shame if something distracted leadership at exactly the wrong moment." The room went quiet, in the particular way rooms go quiet, when everyone understands a threat has been made and no one is willing to name it out loud. Evelyn held Nathan's gaze for 3 full seconds before she answered. "I'm fully focused, Mr. Voss. I'd suggest the board focus on the numbers in front of them rather than rumors behind them." She closed her laptop with more force than necessary and left the room before the meeting officially ended, something she had never done before in 5 years of running the company. Grace found her 10 minutes later in the private elevator, staring at nothing, her hands trembling slightly at her sides. "He knows," Evelyn said. "Somehow he knows about the messages." "Or he's the one sending them," Grace said quietly. Evelyn had considered this already, in the sleepless hours of the night before, turning the thought over like a stone she did not want to pick up because of what might be underneath it. "If Nathan Voss is behind this," she said, "then it isn't random. It's calculated. He wants me destabilized before the merger vote, not hurt. Frightened people make mistakes in board meetings. They don't make mistakes if they're dead." "You don't know that for certain," Grace said. "You don't know how far he'd go." Evelyn said nothing, because she did not know, and not knowing was the most frightening part of all. That evening, Marcus picked her up from the office later than usual, the building nearly empty, the parking garage lit by long rows of fluorescent lights that buzzed faintly overhead. He noticed her hands were unsteady as she got into the car, and he noticed the careful way she arranged her face into something calm, the way a person practices composure in a mirror before stepping outside. "Rough day," he said. "Not quite a question." "You could say that," Evelyn answered. They drove in silence for a while before she spoke again, her voice smaller than he had heard it before. "Can I ask you something?" she said, "and you actually answer honestly, not the way employees answer employers." "Depends on the question," Marcus said. "Were you a soldier?" she asked. "Not delivery driver, not warehouse worker. Before that." Marcus's hand stayed steady on the wheel, though something in his chest tightened at the question, old and familiar, like a door he kept meaning to seal shut for good. "I was a Navy SEAL," he said. 8 years. Left after my wife died, because a man can't raise a daughter alone from the other side of the ocean." Evelyn sat with the words for a moment, watching the city lights slide across the window glass. "How did she die?" Evelyn asked, "if that's something you can say." "Car accident," Marcus said. 2 weeks before I was due to come home for good. I was on a mission I couldn't leave when it happened. By the time I got the call, she'd already been gone 6 hours." He said it flatly, The way a man recites something he has said to himself so many times the words have worn smooth, like river stones. "I'm sorry," Evelyn said, and for once it did not sound like something people say out of habit. "Everyone's sorry," Marcus said. "Doesn't change the 6 hours I wasn't there." Evelyn looked at her own hands in her lap. "I think about my father sometimes," she said, "how he built this company from nothing, and it killed him in every way except the physical one, right up until it did that too. I think I'm doing the same thing to myself, and I can't seem to stop." "Why can't you stop?" Marcus asked. "Because if I stop," Evelyn said, "it means the people waiting for me to fail were right all along, and I would rather be afraid every single day than give them that." Marcus glanced at her in the mirror. "Pride's a heavy thing to carry alone," he said. "I know. I carried mine straight into an empty house for 4 years before I figured out it wasn't keeping me safe. It was just keeping me alone." Evelyn did not answer, but something in her posture softened, just slightly, the way a held breath finally releases. They arrived at her building, and Marcus walked her to the door, as he always did now, though it was not officially part of his job. As they reached the entrance, a man stepped out from beside a parked delivery van across the street, walking briskly toward them with his hand inside his jacket. Marcus's body reacted before his mind fully processed the threat, stepping between Evelyn and the approaching man in one smooth motion, his voice low and hard in a way Evelyn had never heard from him before. "Stay behind me," he said. The man stopped 10 feet away, hand still inside his jacket, his eyes flicking between Marcus and Evelyn with an expression that was more nervous than aggressive. "Miss Cross," the man said quickly, pulling his hand free to reveal only a folded envelope. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to scare anyone. I was told to deliver this directly to you, no one else." Marcus did not relax his stance until the man had backed away and disappeared around the corner, the envelope now in Evelyn's shaking hands. Inside, on plain paper with no signature, were 3 lines that made the color drain from Evelyn's face. The message read, "The accident that killed your father wasn't an accident either. Ask your board about the brake line reports from 6 years ago. You're running out of time to ask the right questions." Evelyn read it twice, then a third time, her breath shallow and fast. "My father died of a heart attack," she said quietly. "That's what the report said. That's what everyone told me." "Who signed off on that report?" Marcus asked. Evelyn's eyes lifted slowly to meet his. "The head of internal security at the time," she said. "A man who resigned 2 months later and now sits on the board. Nathan Voss recommended him for the position originally." The pieces did not click into place all at once. They arrived slowly, one cold realization stacking on top of another, the way ice forms over still water until the whole surface has changed without anyone noticing the exact moment it happened. "We need to get you somewhere safe," Marcus said. "Tonight, not your apartment. Somewhere no one expects." "I can't just disappear," Evelyn said. "There's a merger vote in 10 days. If I vanish now, Voss gets exactly what he wants without lifting a finger." "If you stay in plain sight," Marcus said, "you're giving him an easy target instead of a hard one. There's a difference between hiding and being smart about where you sleep at night." Evelyn hesitated, torn between the fear crawling up her spine and the years of training that told her retreat was always the same as losing. "Where?" she finally asked. Marcus thought of his small apartment, the mismatched furniture, the crayon drawings taped to the refrigerator, and the daughter who did not yet know what her father used to be capable of. "My place," he said. "It's small. It's not what you're used to. But nobody in this city would think to look for you there, and I can watch the door without anyone questioning why." Evelyn looked at him for a long moment, weighing a decision that had nothing to do with numbers or projections, the kind of decision she was not used to making on instinct alone. "All right," she said finally. "Just for tonight." That night, Evelyn Cross sat at a small kitchen table, covered in crayon marks and a half-finished diorama of the solar system, drinking tea from a chipped mug while a 7-year-old girl explained, with great seriousness, why Pluto should still count as a planet regardless of what scientists decided. "It just feels mean," Lily said, "to kick something out after it's already there." Evelyn found herself smiling for the first time in days. "I happen to agree completely," she said. Marcus stood near the window, not fully relaxed, watching the street below through a gap in the curtains the way he used to watch a perimeter, counting cars, counting shadows, counting the small, ordinary movements of a street that had no idea how carefully it was being observed. Later, after Lily had fallen asleep in her small bedroom down the hall, Evelyn stood beside Marcus at the window, both of them quiet, both of them watching a street that appeared, for the moment, completely empty. "She doesn't know," Evelyn said softly, "what you used to do." "She knows I was a soldier," Marcus said. "She doesn't know the rest. Some things aren't for children to carry." "Is it for you to carry?" Evelyn asked. "Alone, forever?" Marcus did not answer right away. His eyes stayed on the street, on the shadow beneath the street lamp that had not moved in 11 minutes, longer than any ordinary person would stand still on a cold night for no reason. "There," he said quietly, nodding toward the shadow. "Someone's watching this building." Evelyn's breath caught. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure," Marcus said, already moving toward the door, already reaching for the jacket hanging by the entrance, his whole body shifting into something quieter and more dangerous than the careful driver Evelyn had known for the past several weeks. "What are you doing?" Evelyn asked, alarm sharp in her voice. "Making sure whoever's out there understands," Marcus said, "that this house isn't an easy target either." He opened the door and stepped into the cold night air, and Evelyn stood frozen at the window, watching the shadow beneath the street lamp finally move, slipping backward into the darkness between two buildings, disappearing before Marcus even reached the sidewalk. He stood there a long moment, scanning the empty street, his breath fogging in the cold air, before he turned and walked back inside, locking the door carefully behind him. "Gone," he said. "For now." "For now," Evelyn repeated, and the words settled over the small apartment like a held breath that had not yet found a place to land. Neither of them slept much that night. Evelyn stayed on the small couch in the living room, a blanket pulled over her knees, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of a building that was not her own, pipes ticking, a neighbor's television murmuring faintly through the wall. Marcus sat in the armchair across from her, not sleeping either, his eyes moving to the window every few minutes, the way a man checks a watch he does not fully trust. "You don't have to stay up all night," Evelyn said quietly, "somewhere near 2 in the morning." "I know," Marcus said. "I'm doing it anyway." "Is this what it was like?" Evelyn asked. "Before? Staying awake, because the alternative felt too dangerous to risk." Marcus considered the question longer than she expected. "It was like this," he said, "except back then, the thing I was protecting wasn't in the same room. It was thousands of miles away, and all I could do was hope someone else was standing where I stood for you tonight." Evelyn pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. "Your wife," she said. "Elena," Marcus said. "She used to tell me the worry didn't help anyone. She was probably right, didn't stop me from doing it anyway." "What was she like?" Evelyn asked, and then quickly added, "You don't have to answer that." "She laughed at things that weren't funny," Marcus said, a small unguarded smile crossing his face for just a moment. "Terrible jokes. The worse the joke, the harder she'd laugh, like she was daring the joke to be funnier, and it never managed it. Lily does the same thing now. Same terrible sense of humor." "That sounds like a good thing to inherit," Evelyn said softly. "It is," Marcus agreed. "Most days I think it's the best thing left of her, walking around in a 7-year-old body, laughing at jokes that don't deserve it." The room settled into a comfortable quiet after that, the kind that did not require filling, and somewhere before dawn, Evelyn finally drifted into a shallow sleep, waking a few hours later to the smell of eggs cooking and Lily's voice arguing passionately with her father about whether cereal counted as a proper breakfast on a school day. By the following afternoon, Grace had arranged for a discreet security review of Evelyn's building, cameras added to blind spots, a new access code changed twice within a week, and a private investigator hired quietly to look into Nathan Voss's financial history without alerting the board to why. The investigator's early findings, delivered to Grace in a plain manila folder, showed a pattern of transfers running back nearly 7 years, routed through accounts that led nowhere obvious unless someone already suspected where to look. "He's been building toward this for a long time," Grace said, spreading the papers across Evelyn's desk. "Long before the merger, long before the messages started. Since my father died," Evelyn said quietly, staring at a transfer dated 2 months after the funeral. "It looks that way," Grace admitted. "I'm sorry." Evelyn did not cry, though something in her chest ached in a way she had not allowed it to ache in years, a grief that had been waiting patiently behind a locked door for someone to finally hand her the key. That evening, Marcus drove her home in silence, both of them aware that the danger had not ended, only sharpened into something with a name and a face they now understood clearly. "He'll come for the vote," Marcus said finally, as they idled at a red light. "Men like that don't stop when they're close. They push harder, because stopping means admitting they've already lost." "Then we make sure he loses anyway," Evelyn said, her voice steadier than it had been in days, something hard and resolved settling into it. "Whatever it costs." Marcus glanced at her in the mirror. "Copy that," he said, and this time Evelyn understood, without needing it explained, that the words meant something closer to a promise than a habit. The merger vote gala was held in a grand hall downtown, chandeliers throwing gold light across marble floors, waiters moving between tables with trays of champagne, and every important name in the city gathered under one roof to watch Evelyn Cross either secure her company's future or lose it in front of everyone who mattered. Marcus stood near the entrance in a suit that did not quite fit him, borrowed for the occasion because his own closet held nothing suitable for a room like this. He was not there as a guest. He was there because Evelyn had insisted, quietly and without room for argument, that if he was going to worry about her safety, he might as well be close enough to do something about it. Nathan Voss arrived 20 minutes after Evelyn, moving through the crowd with the easy confidence of a man who had already decided how the evening would end. "Miss Cross," he said, approaching her near the center of the room, a glass of champagne in his hand he had not yet touched. "You look remarkably composed for someone facing so much uncertainty." "I don't feel uncertain, Mr. Voss," Evelyn said. "I feel prepared." "Prepared for what, exactly?" Nathan asked, his voice pleasant, his eyes cold. "The vote. Or whatever else this week has brought you?" Evelyn held his gaze without blinking. "I think you know exactly what this week has brought me," she said quietly, "and I think you should be very careful about how much further you push it." Nathan's smile flickered, just slightly, before he recovered it fully. "I have no idea what you're implying," he said, and walked away toward a group of board members near the stage, leaving Evelyn standing alone, with her heart pounding beneath a calm exterior she had spent years perfecting. Marcus watched the exchange from across the room, close enough to read body language, too far to hear words, and something about the stiffness in Nathan's shoulders as he walked away told Marcus the conversation had not gone the way the man intended. An hour later, the room grew warm and crowded, speeches given, glasses raised, the vote scheduled for the final portion of the evening once the formal dinner concluded. Evelyn excused herself to the private terrace outside the main hall, needing air, needing a moment away from 100 watching eyes. Marcus followed at a distance, close enough to matter, far enough to give her the illusion of privacy she clearly needed. The terrace overlooked a parking structure 3 floors below, quiet at this hour, only a scattering of cars belonging to staff who had arrived early for setup. Evelyn stood at the railing, breathing in the cold night air, her eyes closed for just a moment of stillness before the evening's second half began. She did not hear the man approach from the shadowed corner of the terrace until his hand closed around her arm. "Don't scream," the man said quietly, his grip tightening, a second man appearing behind him, both of them dressed like catering staff, invisible in a room full of people who never looked closely at anyone serving them food. You're going to walk with us quietly, and nothing happens to you tonight." Evelyn's mind went white with panic for one full second before something colder and clearer took over. The same instinct that had kept her company alive through 5 years of people wanting to take it from her. "Let go of me," she said, low and hard, "or every camera on this terrace will show exactly what you're doing right now." The man's eyes flicked upward toward the terrace corners, checking for cameras that did not actually exist there. A fatal half-second of distraction that gave Evelyn just enough time to twist her arm free and step backward toward the terrace doors. She did not make it 3 steps before the second man grabbed her from behind, one arm locking around her waist, lifting her slightly off the ground as she fought against his grip, her shoes scraping uselessly against the stone floor. The terrace door burst inward. Marcus crossed the distance between the doorway and the 2 men faster than either of them registered a threat had arrived at all. His hand found the first man's wrist and twisted, a short, brutal motion that dropped the man to his knees with a sound between a gasp and a shout, the grip on Evelyn's arm releasing instantly. The second man let go of Evelyn to turn toward this new threat, and that single moment of releasing her was the only mistake he made, though it was the only one that mattered. Marcus moved low and fast, a strike to the man's ribs that folded him forward, followed immediately by a motion at the back of the man's knee that put him flat on the stone terrace floor, disoriented, the fight gone out of him before he understood it had ever truly started. The first man, recovering, reached inside his jacket, and Marcus was already moving before the weapon fully cleared the fabric, closing the distance and driving the man's arm upward and away, the weapon skittering across the stone floor and over the terrace railing, falling 3 floors down into the empty parking structure below. The entire exchange took less than 15 seconds. Marcus stood over both men, breathing controlled and even despite the speed of what had just happened, his hands steady, his eyes scanning the terrace for any additional threat before he allowed himself to look at Evelyn at all. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice quiet, none of the violence of the last 15 seconds carrying into the sound of it. Evelyn stood frozen against the railing, one hand pressed against her chest, where her heart was slamming so hard it hurt, staring at Marcus like she was seeing him for the very first time, though she had known him for weeks. "I'm fine," she managed. "I'm fine. How did you—" She could not finish the question. There was no way to finish it that made sense with the man she had believed she was employing, the quiet driver with tired eyes, and a daughter who drew dogs with too many legs. Marcus knelt down, checked both men for additional weapons with quick, practiced hands, then looked up toward the terrace doorway where a security guard was finally arriving, alerted by the noise, far too late to have made any difference. "Call the police," Marcus said to the guard. "Now. Tell them attempted kidnapping, terrace level, 2 suspects detained." The guard fumbled for his radio, and within minutes the quiet terrace filled with security staff, then police, then the low murmur of a gala event unraveling into chaos as word spread through the main hall that something had happened outside. Nathan Voss appeared at the terrace doorway with the rest of the crowd, his face carefully arranged into concern, though his eyes, when they met Evelyn's, held something colder underneath the practiced worry. "Evelyn," he said, stepping forward, "what happened? Are you all right?" "Someone tried to take me off this terrace," Evelyn said, her voice steadier now than she felt, "and my driver stopped them before anyone else even noticed there was a problem." Nathan's gaze shifted to Marcus, taking in the man properly for the first time, the stillness in his posture, the calm efficiency with which he had handled 2 armed men without raising his own voice once. "Your driver," Nathan repeated slowly. "My driver," Evelyn said, and something in the way she said it made clear the word no longer meant quite what it had meant that morning. The police arrived and took statements. The 2 attackers led away in handcuffs, refusing to speak beyond confirming they had been hired anonymously through an intermediary, paid in cash, given only a description and a terrace number, no name attached to who had hired them. It was, of course, exactly the kind of arrangement a careful man would make if he wanted no trail leading back to himself. Marcus stood near Evelyn throughout the questioning, close enough that she found herself unconsciously leaning slightly toward him, the way a person leans toward warmth in cold weather without fully deciding to do it. When the police finally finished and the gala organizers announced the merger vote would be postponed, given the evening's events, Nathan Voss slipped away through the departing crowd without saying another word to anyone, his face unreadable in the chaos. Marcus watched him go, memorizing the exact way the man moved, filing it away the same way he used to file away details about people who mattered, people who might need to be remembered later. Outside, once the crowd had thinned and the car was finally brought around, Evelyn sat in the back seat in silence for several minutes before she spoke. "You were a Navy SEAL," she said quietly. "You told me that already, but I don't think I understood what that actually meant until tonight." "It means I know how to handle a threat," Marcus said. "Nothing more complicated than that." "That's not nothing," Evelyn said. "That's not close to nothing. You didn't hesitate. Not for 1 second. Most people freeze completely in a moment like that." "I used to be the kind of person who couldn't afford to freeze," Marcus said. "Then I left that life, thinking I'd never need it again. Tonight proved me wrong." Evelyn looked at him in the mirror, at the same tired eyes she had interviewed weeks earlier, and saw them differently now, understanding the weight they carried, the years of training folded quietly beneath ordinary silence. "Thank you," she said, "for not letting anyone finish that sentence tonight." Marcus met her eyes in the mirror and held them for a moment longer than usual. "Copy that," he said, quiet and steady, the same 2 words he said to his daughter every single morning, though Evelyn did not yet know that, and he did not explain it. They drove home through streets that had gone quiet and dark, both of them aware that whatever had existed between them before that terrace had shifted into something neither of them had a name for yet, and neither of them tried to force one into the silence of the car. At a red light, Evelyn spoke again, her voice smaller than it had been all evening. "Those 2 men," she said, "do you think they would have actually hurt me if you hadn't come through that door?" Marcus considered his answer carefully before giving it. "Men hired for a job like that don't usually plan on hurting the target," he said. "Hurting people brings more attention than they want. But plans change fast when things go wrong, and a struggling woman on a terrace 3 floors above a parking lot is exactly the kind of situation where plans go wrong. So yes," Evelyn said quietly. "So maybe," Marcus said. "And maybe is close enough to yes that I'm glad I didn't wait to find out." Evelyn wrapped her arms around herself, the adrenaline of the evening finally draining out of her all at once, leaving something cold and shaking behind it. "I keep replaying it," she said, the second his hand closed around my arm. "It felt like it happened to someone else, like I was watching it from very far away." "That's normal," Marcus said. "Your mind does that sometimes, when the moment is too much to hold on to directly. It steps back so you can keep functioning." "Does it ever stop doing that?" Evelyn asked. "Stepping back. Eventually," Marcus said. "Takes time. Takes someone checking in on you more than once to make sure you're actually all right. Not just saying you're all right because that's easier." Evelyn looked at him. "Is that an offer?" she asked. "To keep checking in?" "It's not really a question," Marcus said. "I was already planning on it." The light turned green, and he pulled forward into the quiet street, and for the first time since the terrace, Evelyn felt something in her chest loosen slightly. Not fully, not all at once, but enough to notice the difference. The morning after the gala, Evelyn Cross sat in a small conference room with 2 detectives, a lawyer, and Grace, going over the events of the previous night for what felt like the 10th time, though it had only been the 3rd. "The 2 men in custody still won't name who hired them," one detective said, flipping through a folder. "But we traced the cash payment through a series of accounts. It took most of the night, but we found a connection to a shell company registered 2 years ago." "Registered by who?" Evelyn asked, though some part of her already suspected the answer. The detective slid a paper across the table. "Registered by an assistant working directly for Nathan Voss. The shell company also made payments to a private security contractor 6 years ago, around the same time your father's internal security report was finalized. Evelyn stared at the paper, at a name that connected 2 deaths and 1 attempted kidnapping into a single quiet thread of intention, patient and cold, stretched across 6 years, without anyone noticing until now. "He's been planning this for years," she said softly. "It looks that way," the detective said. "We'll need to bring him in for questioning. Given the evidence, an arrest is likely within the week." Grace reached across the table and squeezed Evelyn's hand, something she had never done before in 5 years of working together, and Evelyn found she did not pull away from it. "You were right not to trust him," Grace said. "You were right about all of it." "I wish I'd been wrong," Evelyn said quietly. "Being right nearly got me thrown off a terrace 3 floors above a parking lot." Nathan Voss was arrested 4 days later, quietly, without the press coverage he had likely imagined for himself in whatever version of events he had planned instead. The company issued a brief statement about a change in board composition, careful and bloodless, the way large companies always speak about things too large and bloody to say plainly. On the morning of the arrest, Evelyn asked Marcus to drive her to the police station, not because she needed to be there, but because some part of her needed to see it happen with her own eyes rather than read about it in a report. They stood together outside the station in the cold morning air, watching through the glass doors as Nathan Voss was led through the lobby in handcuffs, his suit still pressed, his composure still intact, though his eyes, when they found Evelyn across the room, held none of their usual confidence. He did not say anything to her. There was nothing left for him to say that would not have sounded exactly like what it was, a man who had spent 7 years building toward a moment that had just collapsed in front of him in under a minute. "I thought I'd feel something bigger," Evelyn said quietly, once he had been led away. "Relief, maybe, or anger. Instead, I just feel tired." "Tired makes sense," Marcus said. "You've been carrying this since before you even knew what you were carrying." Evelyn nodded slowly, watching the empty lobby through the glass. "My father would have handled this so differently," she said. "He never let anyone see him tired. Not once. Not even at the end." "Maybe that's not something worth inheriting," Marcus said. "Some things are better left with the person who carried them first." Evelyn looked at him for a long moment, something unguarded passing across her face. "You have a way of saying exactly what I need to hear, without making it feel like advice," she said. 8 years of learning to talk soldiers off ledges they didn't know they were standing on, Marcus said. "Some habits are useful outside the job too." They drove back to the office in a silence that had grown easy between them, the kind that no longer needed filling with anything at all. Evelyn did not attend the press conference. She sat instead in the back seat of her car, watching the city move past the window, while Marcus drove her home in a silence that had grown comfortable, rather than careful, over the past several days. "It's over," she said finally. "Or at least the part that could be proven with evidence is over." "How does that feel?" Marcus asked. Evelyn considered the question honestly. "Strange," she said. "I spent 6 years believing my father's death was simply bad luck. Now I know it wasn't, and somehow that's both a relief and an entirely new kind of grief." "Grief doesn't usually announce which kind it is," Marcus said. "It just arrives and expects you to sort it out yourself." Evelyn looked at him in the mirror. "You'd know," she said. It was not a question. "I'd know," Marcus agreed. That evening, at a small dinner arranged partly by Grace and partly by Evelyn's own quiet insistence, Evelyn found herself standing in the doorway of Marcus's apartment for the second time, though this visit carried none of the fear of the first. Lily answered the door before her father could reach it, standing on her toes to see through the gap, her eyes widening at the sight of the woman from the diorama night. "You're the tea lady," Lily announced. "You liked my Pluto argument." "I still agree with your Pluto argument completely," Evelyn said, crouching slightly to be closer to Lily's height. "I've thought about it several times since." Lily beamed and pulled her inside without waiting for permission, chattering about her solar system project. which had received a gold star despite Saturn's rings having been glued back together slightly crooked. Marcus watched from the kitchen doorway as his daughter led Evelyn Cross by the hand toward the small table where the diorama still sat, half taken apart for storage, planets scattered like the evening had simply paused mid-conversation days earlier and picked back up exactly where it left off. Over dinner, plain and simple, nothing like the catered gala food from days before, Evelyn found herself laughing at something Lily said about her teacher's strange obsession with pencil sharpening, a genuine sound that surprised even herself with how easily it arrived. "You don't laugh like that at the office," Marcus observed quietly, once Lily had excused herself to fetch a drawing she wanted to show Evelyn. "I don't laugh like that anywhere," Evelyn admitted. "I'm not sure when I stopped." "Probably around the same time you decided being afraid was safer than being seen," Marcus said. Evelyn looked at him carefully. "That's a very specific observation for a driver," she said. "I told you," Marcus said. "I notice things. Old habit." "Is that the only reason you notice things about me?" Evelyn asked. "Old habit?" The question sat in the air between them, quieter and more fragile than anything either of them had said since the terrace, since the interview, since the very first drive when Marcus had taken 3 unnecessary turns to protect a woman he barely knew. Marcus did not answer with words right away. He simply held her gaze, the same steady look he had given her in the mirror after the attack, the look that said more than his careful sentences usually allowed. "No," he said finally, "that's not the only reason." Lily returned at that exact moment, holding up a new drawing with the seriousness of an artist presenting a masterpiece, and the moment folded itself away without resolution, tucked quietly between 2 people who both understood something had shifted, and neither one felt any need to rush toward naming it. 3 weeks later, the company held its rescheduled merger vote, which passed with Evelyn Cross firmly at the head of the table, no shadow of Nathan Voss remaining anywhere in the room to challenge her. She delivered her presentation with the same steady voice as always, though something in her posture had changed, looser somehow, less like a woman bracing for an attack that might come from any direction. Afterward, walking to the car, she found Marcus waiting exactly where he always waited, holding the door open the way he had every single day since the interview weeks earlier. "You could hire actual security now," Evelyn said, sliding into the back seat. "A whole team. You don't have to keep doing both jobs." "I know," Marcus said, closing the door and walking around to the driver's seat. "So why haven't you brought it up?" Evelyn asked, once he was settled behind the wheel. Marcus met her eyes in the mirror, the same mirror that had first told him someone was following her car weeks earlier, the same mirror that had shown him a woman guarding herself so carefully she had nearly missed every warning sign around her. "Because I'm not sure I want to stop being the one who notices things about you," he said. Evelyn was quiet for a moment, watching the city slide past the window, the same river of traffic she had watched from her office window the very first day she decided to hire a broke single father with no references and a resume missing 4 important years. "Good," she said finally, "because I'm not sure I want you to stop either." That evening, Marcus picked Lily up from school, as he always did, and she climbed into the car, chattering about a new project, something about building a model bridge out of craft sticks that had to hold the weight of a textbook without collapsing. "Is the tea lady coming over again soon?" Lily asked, buckling her seatbelt with the careful concentration of a child who took car safety extremely seriously since her father had explained it to her many times. "Maybe," Marcus said. "We'll see." "I like her," Lily said simply. "She listens like she actually wants to know the answer, not just because grown-ups are supposed to ask kids questions." Marcus smiled slightly, watching his daughter in the mirror the way he had once watched threats and exits. The same careful attention now settled onto something far gentler than the habits of his old life. "She's good at listening," he agreed. "I noticed that too." Lily nodded, satisfied, already moving on to describing her bridge design in exhaustive detail, and Marcus drove them home through streets that no longer felt like they were hiding anything, no gray sedans, no shadows beneath street lamps, no messages with no return address waiting in a drawer. That night, after Lily had fallen asleep, Marcus stood at the window the way he always did, checking the street out of habit rather than fear now, watching ordinary cars pass beneath ordinary streetlights. His phone buzzed with a message from Evelyn, simple and short, asking whether he and Lily might want to come by that weekend. Nothing formal, just dinner, just the three of them somewhere that was not an apartment kitchen or a glass office 40 floors above the street. Marcus looked at the message for a long moment before he typed back 2 words, the same 2 words he had said to Evelyn in the mirror after the terrace. The same 2 words Lily sometimes echoed back to him without understanding why it made him go quiet every single time she said it. Copy that. He set the phone down on the counter and looked once more out the window at the quiet street below, no longer counting exits, no longer watching for shadows that did not move for 11 minutes at a time, simply looking at an ordinary night in an ordinary city and finding, for the first time in a very long while, that ordinary felt like enough.